Hello lovelies! Today I figured I would try something new, so I'm going to still introduce a candle and my tea, which I think are very perfect for what I'm trying to do today. So I haven't had a chance to read a lot of books to be able to do more reviews, but I really want to try and keep a weekly upload schedule for you guys. That's why I've started doing some unboxings when I get book mail, and I figure this week, to get me to read a little bit and to give you some content, I would do an out loud reading from a book. So today, the candle I am burning as I move this lit candle very dangerously, please do not do this at home, which is the scent Mist from Treehouse & Co. It is a hand-poured soy wax candle, and Treehouse & Co. is based out of the northwest part of the United States, Seattle and Oregon area, and mist is supposed to smell like the mist that rolls in on a foggy, rainy day in the northwest. So that is very cool, very calm scent, very nice. It's another one that I got from Velobox. Really love it. And then today I am drinking out of my lovely, beautiful elephant mug. He's so cute. And I am just drinking a standard black Earl Grey tea with some sugar for added sweetness. One of my favorite teas on the planet is just a standard Earl Grey, and I thought it would be really nice to just have this kind of calming mist and Earl Grey while I read to you out of this book, which I will show you the cover art, but it's going to be reversed. It is called His Hideous Heart, and it's edited by Dahlia Adler. It is 13 Edgar Allen Poe tales and reimaginings of them written by YA authors. So I've already read some of these stories out of this book, but I figured today I would do a reading wrapped in my blankie, all snuggly, and just kind of calmly give you some readings of some of my favorite Edgar Allan Poe tales, and maybe a few of the reimaginings of some stories of his that I don't know as well. So this will probably be a longer video of mostly just me reading aloud. I'm probably going to try and do some editing, which I don't normally do on my videos because time. And after this little intro, probably try and just have my voice with some like soothing images maybe. We'll see. Well, you'll see. All right, with that, let's go ahead and read. I'm going to start off with one of the retellings, which is The Glittering Death, written by Caleb Rohrig. I'm sorry if I butchered that. It is inspired by The Pit and the Pendulum. The devil comes for me in a dark alley, wet with rain and lit by a cold moon, and I walk right into his clutches. It's a careless move, like the countless careless moves people make every day with no consequences, even when they know better. Even when they know they fit a profile, and that someone is hunting people just like them on the streets at night. But it's the end of my shift. I'm tired and irritable, and all I want to do is go home. So I'm distracted when I take the garbage out to the dumpster behind the cafe. My mind already fixed on a near future of fast food and streaming video, trolling my group chat with bad puns. And I'm not paying attention. The alley is narrow, a space that seems to exist solely for the convenience of trucks to make deliveries and haul away trash, and the street lamps meant to illuminate it burn out and go weeks without being replaced. There's hardly enough light to see by, and I'm hoisting a bag up to the metal rim of the bin when I hear a footfall behind me. I turn with just enough time to see a dark shape separate itself from the shadows by the wall, lunging forward. To see the swirl of a long robe, the point of a hood, and two eyes that glint in the center of a black void where a face should be. An iron grip closes on my arm, something sharp pricking the flesh of my bicep, and a gloved hand clamps my mouth shut before I can scream. My heart races, my head grows light while my limbs grow heavy. and the alley blurs, darkness sliding over darkness as I sway on legs that have suddenly given up their support. The devil folds me into his embrace, my heart pounding slower and slower. The world a slippery thing that won't hold me anymore. And just before I lose consciousness, I hear him speak. "I've got you now." "He calls himself the Judge," a woman had announced before an afternoon assembly at my school 2 weeks earlier. Standing at the edge of the stage, she had glared down at us with a stern expression, her dark skin looking impossibly smooth under the bright lights. Cut in clean, severe lines from her tailored blazer and white shirt to her angled cheekbones and sleek cap of black hair, she'd identified herself as Agent Fields. She'd even held up an official FBI identification badge for show and tell, as if any of the 600 students gathered in the school theater were close enough to read it from the audience. I'm sure that many of you have read or heard about him in the news already. She was right, of course. With a population of 300,000, Toledo, Ohio isn't exactly a small town. But a serial killer who cuts women open and sends anonymous letters to the press after the fact tends to make a wide impression. What we know about the Judge, Agent Fields went on, her voice carrying to the far reaches of the room, is that he targets young women between the ages of 15 and 25. That most of his victims have been white, with dark hair that is approximately shoulder length, and that he abducts his victims and holds them in captivity for some time before he kills them. The words landed with the precision of an ice pick, carving room for themselves in the fear centers of our brains. Agent Fields was there to make her own impression, eyes sharp and arms akimbo, and exhibited no patience for an auditorium full of teenagers who gossiped and whispered while she was trying to terrify us. "What we know," she boomed, "is that the Judge saws his victims' chests open while they are still alive, and that he then removes their hearts. We suspect he keeps the organs as souvenirs." This gruesome detail finally brought some silence to the room, and satisfaction pulled at a corner of the FBI agent's mouth. He dumps the bodies where he knows they'll eventually be found. Farmland, parks, drainage ditches. And once they are, he delivers a message to the press explaining why he's done what he's done. The letters accuse each victim of one or more of the 7 deadly sins: pride, envy, wrath, lust, avarice, gluttony, or sloth. The letters also list the supposed weight of each missing heart as part of the so-called evidence in his finding of guilt. Agent Fields paced the stage, pivoting on her heel, peering up into the balcony with the lights in her eyes. "We're talking about a complete psychotic here, okay? These letters are the ravings of a madman. The girls he's killed were guilty of nothing but being in the wrong place at the wrong time." Fields had a partner, Agent Prescott, who stood impassively in the background. Petite and blonde, with thin lips and spiky hair, she kept her arms folded throughout the presentation, and every time I looked up, I could swear she was watching me, as if she could hear me telling my friends that she looked like Clarice Starling's love child with Rosemary Woodhouse. I was seated in the back of the audience with Brandy, Mark, and Shauna, and we were trading quips under our breath for the entire assembly. We called ourselves the Mean Girls as a joke, but the truth is that sometimes we are sort of mean. The abductions and the subsequent dumping and discovery of the bodies will all follow a pattern, Agent Fields went on relentlessly. They all take place at around the same time in each lunar cycle. Girls go missing 3 to 7 days before the full moon, and are discovered dead anywhere from 1 to 6 days after the full moon. "He's a werewolf!" Aaron Lutz shouted from the balcony, and he got a few laughs that withered and died under the implacable glower of the FBI agents on the stage. "He's not a storybook monster," Fields countered, almost quietly, her voice full of dark foreboding. "He's a man. He's flesh and blood like everyone in this room, and if you see him, you won't know it." She let that sink in, until the vast room rang with silence. "Go ahead and make jokes if that's what you need to do, but take this seriously. Because for everything we know about the Judge, There are a million things we don't. And despite what you see on TV, serial killers change their MO all the time. The judge could be anyone, and he could be after anyone, including people in this room. And it's only 19 days until the next full moon. Surfacing from oblivion, the first thing I become aware of is the unmanageable weight of my limbs, as if my skeleton has been removed and my body filled with sand. My head throbs, and it takes a century to fight my eyelids open. It's like the time that Shauna and I got her older brother to buy us wine coolers. They were cloyingly sweet and went down like fruit punch, and the next morning it took every ounce of willpower I had just to get off the floor long enough to vomit into a half-empty bag of Doritos. But this is worse. Blinking my eyes, my thoughts still fogged, and my vision an untrustworthy kaleidoscope of doubled images, I know I'm in trouble before I know anything else. A light bulb hangs from the ceiling, backed by a metal shade, casting down a dim glow of sulphurous yellow. The same color of the street lamps that are supposed to keep the alley behind the cafe safe. For a while I stare, herding the scattered fragments of my thoughts, gradually coming to realize that I don't know where I am. When I push into a seated position, thin metal bites the palms of my hands. The room dances, a swirling centrifuge of blackness, and I battle down a wave of nausea. Rippled and soft, the walls seem to melt like wax pouring down from the ceiling. And it takes me a long, disorienting moment to realize that what I'm looking at is curtains. Great swaths of thick, inky fabric that ring the room, blocking out any windows, anything that might give me a sense of my surroundings. I could be in a warehouse, a penthouse, or a tomb, for all I can tell. At the opposite end of the room from where I lie, I can make out a steel table, its silvered edge gleaming yellow in the bilious light from above. My stomach pulls and then wrenches, and I turn with difficulty onto all fours, convinced I'm about to be sick. Where am I? A wet and musty basement smell coils around me like vapor as my vision finally starts to coalesce, and I take in the wiry lattice that surrounds me. My mouth goes dry at the same time a chilling realization sets in. I am in a cage. Panic sweeps back over me in a bright wave, my heart galloping into my throat. Gripping the walls of my enclosure, I give the metal a hard shake, hearing it rattle. I shake harder, fear making me desperate, some feral remnant of my brain ascending. I'm in a cage. My muscles start to burn, flop sweat rolling from under my arms, and the sturdy wire begins to cut into the soft flesh of my fingers, but my efforts are useless. The mesh won't bend, the joints won't give, and frantic tears spangle my vision as my chest heaves. The judge. It has to be the judge. My ears ring with the memory of Agent Fields standing on the edge of the stage, trying to scare us. Abducts his victims, holds them in captivity, still alive. And bile rushes up my throat. My eyes are finally adjusting to the dark, and I can make out the steel table with more clarity now. I can see the shallow gutters along its sides, the locked wheels on its feet, the drain set into the concrete floor just beneath it. It's meant for surgical procedures. Help! I shout. The word sounds pathetic, denied resonance by the heavy curtains that gobble up sound with a vengeance. But once I've begun screaming, I find I can't stop. Somebody please help me! Falling back, I start slamming my feet into the walls of the cage, trying to find weaknesses, trying to create some, shouting until my throat is raw. Just beyond the cacophony of my struggle, I hear a click and a creak of hinges, and I freeze. It's absurd. I made the noise hoping for attention, but as heavy footsteps thump against wood somewhere behind the folds of the black curtains around me, I go utterly still. Because I know. With every fiber of my being, I know it's him. He emerges through an invisible gap in the thick drapery, at the far end of the room where the metal table waits, still in the strange costume he wore in the alley. The robe that swirls around him hangs all the way to the floor, a dull crimson beneath the jaundiced light of the single bulb. He approaches my cage on soundless feet, and I scuttle backward, a whimper escaping my lips. "The accused is awake," he intones, stopping when he's only a few feet away. The hood he wears covers his face completely, except for 2 small holes for his eyes. "Who are you?" I ask, even though I know the answer. "Where am I?" "The accused has been brought before the judge for the crimes of pride and lust," the man states in a grandiose way. "Does the harlot wish to make a confession?" "I haven't done anything." My voice is scarcely above a whisper. "Please let me out. I'm not a harlot. Just let me out, okay? I won't tell. I promise. The accused offends the judge with begging and false claims of innocence. "They're not false." Adrenaline squeezes my heart like a voice, and my pitch rises. "I'm not a harlot. I'm a fucking virgin, okay? So you've obviously— Vulgarity!" He stumbles back as if he's been struck, gloved hands flying to his ears. Even through the hood, I can see him blink, his eyes dark and shiny like beetle shells. "She pretends innocence, but defiles the very air with her shameful tongue." "She has a name, asshole," I retort without thinking, my instincts driving me to claim some sort of ground. "And I'm not pretending anything. I'm a virgin, so you've made a fucking mistake." He moans, swinging away, hands clamped over his ears. "The putrescence of her soul exudes from her mouth like the stench of rot, foul and unclean." "The putrescence of my soul?" A switch flips, fear turning to reckless anger in a heartbeat. "You're a sick fuck who kidnaps girls and cuts them open, and you're calling me foul?" He reels backward, mumbling something under his hood. "Let me the hell out of this fucking cage, you fucking fuck." Each profanity drives him another step back, his mumbling growing louder and more plaintive. I catch snatches of it. "Miorum peccatorum, summonum bonum, omnia diligeris," and realize he's speaking Latin. I'm not Catholic, but Mark has dragged me to church with his family on several occasions. If God tries to strike me down for being gay, I'm throwing your heathen ass in the way of the lightning bolt. And I recognize the prayer. My sins, the highest good, all my love. He's saying the act of contrition. I start to swear at the top of my lungs every curse I can think of and every variation I can possibly devise. The judge takes each word like a bullet, falling back a step at a time, and I shout harder. I have no plan, but he's acting like it hurts, and that's good enough for me. When he reaches the table, his Latin prayer loud enough to compete with my screamed obscenities, he wrenches something free from the darkness behind the curtains and begins stalking back in my direction. I falter, fearing the worst, and when he reaches the cage again, I scuttle as far from the door as I can get. Eyes gleaming through the holes in his hood, his voice gruff, he snarls, "The accused will learn to show respect for the divine court, and to regret the filth that spews from her vile mouth." He holds something in his hand, aiming at me through the walls of the cage, and I have no time to plead for mercy before a torrent of icy water sluices through the mesh. It's a hose, the end fitted with a nozzle that makes the spray focused and painful, tattooing my skin through the black pants and white shirt I wore for work. I'm drenched from head to foot, shivering with cold by the time he cuts the nozzle off, and I uncover my face just in time to see him fixing metal clamps to the wire lattice of my prison. Attached to fat cables, they snake their way to a large black box with exposed terminal posts. The truth of what's about to happen hits me in a brutal instant, and I choke out, "No, please!" "The accused will learn respect," he thunders, and throws a switch on the box. Electricity hums along the cables, streaks through every wire of the cage, and crackles through the water that pools underneath me. My body seizes, every muscle locking up like a fist, pain fitting itself to all of my nerve endings in the space of an instant. Everything shakes, my heart stops and starts, and my eyes roll until they throb. Blood roars in my ears, a steady pounding like a hunter's drum flushing prey to its doom, until oblivion wraps its fingers back around me and pulls me away. "I'm a virgin," I'd insisted 2 weeks earlier, whispering in the back row of the theater, feeling Agent Prescott's creepy doll eyes all over me as I snickered with my friends. "Pure as the driven snow." "Plowed as the driven snow is more like it," Mark reposited under his breath, and Brandy clutched her stomach, trying not to cackle out loud. "I'm being serious," I told them primly. "Come on, Laura," Brandy fixed me with the no-nonsense look she had, the one that said she knew more about me than I did. "You and Zane were together for 9 months, and I know you tried his snow cone." Mark succumbed to another fit of snorting laughter, and my face heated. I could feel Shauna on my right side like an exposed nuclear core, radiating heat and invisible disapproval. Summoning my dignity, I stated, "There are things I did with Zane and things I didn't, and that's all I'm going to say." Even to my own ears, I sounded uptight, but I had reasons. My ex-boyfriend Zane had been a jerk more often than he wasn't, but he'd never pressured me to do anything I didn't want to. We'd done mouth stuff and hand stuff, but I'd been cautious about the final frontier, and he'd respected that. And then we broke up, and Shauna and I got drunk on wine coolers, and we kind of did some things together too. And then she got weird about it afterward, and we still hadn't told Brandy or Mark. And honestly, I wasn't entirely clear on what constituted losing your virginity when there were no penises to be had anyway, because they absolutely did not cover that stuff in sex ed. The judge could be anyone, and he could be after anyone, including people in this room. And it's only 19 days until the next full moon, Agent Fields declared ominously from the stage, filling the awkward silence I'd created. So here's a little practical advice. Don't walk around alone at night. Keep your phone charged and keep it handy. Make sure your friends and family know where you're going to be at all times so that if you don't show up, someone will notice. And keep an eye out for one another. 6 girls have died because the judge caught them when they weren't expecting it. Make sure you're always expecting it. Fuck, why don't we all just lock ourselves in our bedrooms until we're 30? Mark rolled his eyes, seeking out agreement, but we left him hanging. It wasn't his fault. He's gay, but he's a boy, and he hasn't heard that exact same advice spewed at him about every activity that might get him out of the house. Going to the mall? Make sure people know where you are. Staying out late? Keep your phone with you at all times. Going to a party? Don't you dare leave your drink unattended. The judge is an organized killer, Fields continued. He sticks to a schedule, he approaches his victims when he knows they'll be alone, and he chooses dump sites where the bodies will be found soon, but where he won't be caught in the act. Something else he does is depersonalize his victims. She moved back and forth across the stage. His letters to the press deliberately avoid using his victims' actual names. Behavioral profiling is an inexact science, so take what I'm about to tell you with a grain of salt. But we believe the judge is personally familiar with his victims. We believe he knows the women he kills, and that dehumanizing them is how he escapes the guilt he feels over what he does to them. The theater was silent. This time, I claw my way back to consciousness like someone buried alive, dragging themselves up from the grave. My body hurts all over, every muscle stiff and aching. Even my eyelids feel bruised as I peel them open against the dull burn of the overhead light. I'm freezing cold. my clothes and the floor beneath me still wet from the hose, and I wonder how long I've been out. Looking around, I see that I'm all alone again, with the surgical table and the stifling curtains, and I swallow something that tastes like relief. Propping myself up on a shaky elbow, however, I realize that the judge has placed a few things inside the cage with me. A dented metal bedpan, a plastic cup of water, and a paper plate with a hunk of bread. It horrifies me how grateful I am. My mouth is as dry as the surface of Mars, and being electrocuted has left me with what feels like an extremely untrustworthy bladder. My skin crawls as I use the bedpan, feeling the judge's eyes evaluating my body, convinced he has cameras aimed at my enclosure. Finishing as quickly as I can, I reach for the bread and pause, wondering if maybe it's poisoned. 19 days until the next full moon. That had been 2 weeks ago, which means there are still 5 days to go. Maybe. Agent Fields hadn't come right out and said that the judge killed on the full moon, but that was the inference. To keep me alive long enough to cut my actual heart out, he'd have to feed me, right? Even so, my stomach rebels at the mere notion of eating. Pride and lust. I shiver again, the cold, scaly sensation of his voice rubbing against my memory. What did he mean? My face warms as I think about all the times Brandy, Mark, Shauna, and I made an unkind joke at another's expense. Looking back, maybe it was prideful behavior. We never said those things when we thought people could hear us, but maybe we'd been careless one time. Or maybe our self-satisfied attitudes alone were enough. But no. I shake loose my shame. This dude doesn't intend to cut my heart out because my friends and I think we're cool. And there is no way he's someone my age. No teenager could have this guy's resources. I take in the concrete floor, the curtains, the shape of the space. Almost definitely I'm in someone's basement. But even if I'm on the bottom floor of an abandoned factory, what teenager could possibly keep me here? To set all this up, to come and go at any time? He'd been ready when I emerged from the cafe. I've got you now. Reaching past the bread, I pick up the water, a nerve tickling inside me like a gas burner ready to ignite. Agent Fields' voice sweeps through me again with all her dire pronouncements, telling us the judge knew his victims. He didn't stumble into that alley by coincidence, dressed like a carnival worker and carrying a sedative. The asshole had been waiting for me. My dry throat nearly crackles as I gulp down the water. I work 2 night shifts a week, and each one ends with a trash run. How long has this guy been watching? How long have I been on his radar? His eyes burn in my memory, 2 glistening stones in the frayed holes of his hood, and I try to line them up with someone I know. Insects swarm through my veins at the thought that someone I've spoken to, smiled at, touched, might lurk behind that mask. He hasn't taken it off, I realize. He was wearing it when he grabbed me, and again when he demanded that confession. Why? The only reason for him to keep his face covered at this point would be the fear that I could recognize him, right? And that would only matter if there's still a chance I could go free. I realize the foolishness of letting myself think it could happen, but it's a glimmer of hope and I cling to it. Maybe there's some way, something I could do that the other girls didn't. He wants a confession. Should I flatter his sense of power and give him one? Or did the other girls, the 6 already found dead and heartless, come to the same conclusion? Maybe telling him I'm guilty will only hasten my horrible death. In the dim light, I explore the cage, finding the joints and testing their integrity. The metal is strong, but there have to be vulnerabilities. As I examine my prison, I try to focus on the man's voice, the way he spoke to me. The accused is awake. I roll the sound over in my mind, struggling to pinpoint anything about its pitch or timbre that might offer a clue to who he is. The mesh walls of my enclosure swim in front of me, the golden bulb overhead reels, and too late, I realized the water in the plastic cup was drugged. Slumping to the floor, I drag myself through the puddle of cold water to the back of the cage. My heart thudding with sluggish resistance, I barely make it to the corner opposite the door before the blackness overtakes me again. I feel him before I see him. A presence hovering at the rim of my consciousness, a feature on the dark side of the moon. Groggy and listless, my body full of sand again, I angle my face toward the front of the cage with great effort. The judge stands watching me, his scarlet robe and obscuring hood rendered drab by the shallow bulb. Even when the light behind him, I can still see the unearthly shine in his eyes through the ragged holes. "She awakens," he observes. Yes. My tongue is too thick for my mouth. She awakens. The appointed hour draws closer. The judge inclines his head slowly. Has the accused reconsidered her refusal to confess? Fear makes me dizzy, and I don't trust my limbs to support me if I sit up, so I remain on the ground. I want to make a statement. His head tips to the side, his gaze boring through the top layer of my skin. What sort of statement? The accused has already tested the judge's leniency. My heart beats so hard I entertain a split-second fantasy of using it to break through the wires of the cage. But instead, I close my trembling fingers into fists and find my voice. My name is Laura Catherine Martello. Is this a confession? My best friend's name is Mark Montez. Or maybe Shauna Watts is my best friend now. I'm not sure how to define that stuff. I've known Mark longer. We sat next to each other in kindergarten because our seats were in alphabetical order, and I was scared, and when my blue crayon broke and I started to cry, he gave me the one from his box. She stands accused of offending the natural order as laid down by the Almighty, and she speaks of crayons. But lately Shauna and I have gotten closer, I barrel on, desperately, speaking faster. We met freshman year in Spanish 1, and I don't think we liked each other at first, but a lot has changed since then. The accused now tests the judge's patience, my captor snaps, taking an agitated step to one side and then the other, the fabric of his cloak shifting as his shoulders rise. Forcing myself up onto an elbow at last, I hear my own voice break as I scramble ahead. My mom's name is Kelly. She's an X-ray technician and a Libra, and she pretends she doesn't believe in astrology, but she totally does. My dad is Matthew, and he does furniture reclamation, like takes old dressers and tables and refinishes them so they can be sold again. They met when my dad broke his arm falling. Enough, the judge barks angrily. The prisoner wastes the holy court's time speaking of trivialities. I have a cat, I whimper, a tear slipping down my cheek. Her name is Dumbledore, and she's almost 14, and she can't see very well anymore. I'm the only person she likes, and she's probably lonely. This is false, the man fulminates from behind his mask. The accused pours poison in my ears, telling lies upon lies, trying to bury one hideous sin beneath another. When the appointed hour comes, her deceitful tongue will be removed first. He makes the decision with an air of relief, and his agitation subsides. Her tongue will be excised so that it may testify against her. She will watch it squirm and hear her lies, and her unclean soul will cower. I'm going to be a veterinarian, I whisper, feeling every fiber of my tongue as I use it to speak. I've always loved animals, and when Dumbledore was diagnosed with feline leukemia, I knew I wanted to help other kids with sick animal friends. I'm 17, I'm a senior, and I've applied to a bunch of schools, but I want to go somewhere close to home because I love my parents. With a heaving breath, I start to sob. I love my parents so much, and I don't want to be far away from them. The accused was offered a chance to admit the transgressions that blacken her soul, but she chose instead to scorn the judge's mercy and embrace the devilry that wells within her. He stalks back to the surgical table, retrieving the hose, and as he returns to the cage, opening the nozzle and drenching me in another stinging blast of gelid water, I finally realize my mistake. He has no mercies upon which I could throw myself, and there is no chance I will be set free. My guilt was determined long before he took me, and I can say nothing that won't stand against me as a further proof that I deserve to die. The man isn't wearing a disguise to keep me from recognizing him. He's wearing a uniform. Beyond just appointing himself judge, he's also appointed himself jury and executioner. And executioners wear hoods. This time, when he cranks the electricity on, I feel it arc between the fillings in my back teeth, hear it snapping in my ears and sizzling along the part in my hair. I try to scream, but my lungs are like stones in my chest, and when I finally black out again, it comes as a blessing. Time passes in a blur. When I wake next, my bedpan has been emptied and my bread and water replenished. I don't know what day it is, how long it's been since the end of my shift at the cafe, and I have no idea how close we are to the appointed hour. The moment when I'll pay for sins I never committed in the worst way imaginable. I eat and drink as little as possible, needing sustenance, but knowing that each swallow stands to rob me of what little time I have left. I grow drowsy after every meal, slipping in and out of consciousness, waking to find more water, more bread. In a dream, Agent Fields speaks to me. We sit at a table in the cafe, and she taps one blunted nail on the surface before me, her eyes implacable. "He was here, you know. This is where he found you." "I know." I nod, even though I hadn't been certain. "A killer like the judge. What he wants is control. Try not to give it to him." "I'm locked in an electrified cage," I explain carefully. "I'm pretty sure he's got all the control he fucking needs." "No," Agent Fields shakes her head slowly. "He has power, but not control. The first he can seize, but the latter he must be given. The judge needs you to capitulate, to play his game. He has a fantasy that he recreates over and over, and he's cast you in a specific role. It doesn't work for him if you don't say your lines. So don't." "I'm sorry," I say lightly. "Are you telling me not to cooperate with my murderer? Because I tried that strategy already, and he electrocuted my ass." "I didn't say it would work," Fields replies calmly. "Great. Thanks. Thanks for this little pep talk." "There's a really good chance you're going to die in this basement, Laura," Fields goes on, determined to make this the worst date I'll never have. "But you've still got a choice. You can go out like a lamb, or you can go out like a lion. Which is it gonna be?" I wake up as the judge is arranging my sad little meal, and when he sees that my eyes are open, he lunges back out of the cage, slamming the door shut. Glaring at me through his shabby, pitiful hood, he snarls, "The judgment of the accused draws nigh. Tomorrow, when the sun drops, it shall bring with it the final word. The prisoner must drink." "Is that the final word?" I ask. Surly and combative, my imagined exchange with the FBI agent clanking about in my head like loose ball bearings. "The prisoner must drink," he repeats. My head is still fogged, a near constant state now, but as I gaze down at the cup, some new ideas struggle together. I have to have been in this cage for days already, but I've spent most of it sleeping off a drugged stupor, and aside from his demands for a confession, he's kept our interactions to a minimum. Recalling the way he darted back out of the cage, I also realized that I've never seen him open the door before. He's always waited until I'm out cold to empty my bedpan or set out the food. Is he scared of me? He's tall, but the cloak disguises his build. Underneath it, for all I know, he might be some cowardly beanpole with toothpick arms. Keeping me weak and disoriented around the clock might make me easier to manipulate, but it also keeps me from fighting back or shouting. Maybe he wants me unconscious so I won't start screaming again and risk being heard by the neighbors or the mailman or whoever. It doesn't work for him if you don't say your lines. I put my hand on the cup, and for a moment I see myself flinging its contents into the judge's face, telling him no, cursing him out again, refusing to be controlled. But I don't. Whatever time it is, tomorrow is still too soon. 24 hours? 36? 18? Do I really want to go the rest of my life with no food or water just to prove a point to a masked psycho? Every time I lash out or fight back, he turns on the electricity, and I've had enough. It seems like my two options are to spend what time I have left in either a chemical daze or a debilitated state of sheer agony. It isn't even a toss-up. If I have any hope of mounting an escape, I can't do it hungry, thirsty, and racked with pain. Bringing the cup to my lips, my eyes on the judge, I drank. When I come to again, my body is so heavy I feel half fused to the floor. Whatever the judge has been giving me, he must have upped the dose, because even pulling air into my lungs takes effort. As I realize I'm awake, a dart of panic careens through me and I work my eyes open. I can't focus, the light bulb dancing a minuet as I try to gather my faculties. What time is it? How much longer do I have? By the cage door, more bread has been set out, my water cup refilled. I work my way into a sitting position, my head spinning and my stomach overturning, and I barely make it to the bedpan before I throw up. When I'm finally empty, nothing coming out but gooey strings of bile, I can't hold back anymore. I begin to cry. A foul taste coats my tongue, acid burns my nose, and I can't even rinse my mouth without the risk of blacking out again and losing what precious little time I have left. When the heaving stops and my gut settles, I slump back, wiping my eyes on my work shirt. I've been wearing it for days, and now it's filthy and rumpled. Distantly, I wonder if I can fashion a noose out of the sleeves. I don't want to die. I'm not ready. But if death is inevitable, I'd rather meet it on my own terms than let the judge cut me apart. Still alive. She is awake. His voice takes me by surprise, and I whirl around, the room tilting a little. Standing by the door, he peers at me with reptilian eyes. My throat raw, I croak, "What time is it?" "It is afternoon. The ritual will begin in a few hours." A few hours? My heart starts to thud. It's too soon. I'd planned on having time to think, time to come up with something. You keep saying I'm accused. Who's accusing me? She is accused by the divine truth itself, which, when violated, always seeks justice. He speaks pompously, straightening his shoulders. This is the prisoner's last chance to make a full confession, so that she may go to her Creator with one less lie on her soul. To show contrition before she reaps the harvest of her indecent acts. I don't know what to do. Out like a lamb or out like a lion? Drawing back, I look him in the eyes. I have nothing to confess. Hell will be ugly. He stands there, waiting in the spill of light while I watch him back. Thinking, impatiently he says, "The prisoner will eat and drink." "Laura Catherine Martello is not hungry or thirsty just now," I reply, anger creeping into my blood. "And this bread is shitty anyway." The judge shifts, eyes narrowing into slits. The accused compounds her sins even to the last. She knows the payment for her foul tongue and obstreperous behavior. Oh, is not being hungry a crime now, too? "The prisoner will drink." My eyes drop to the cup. Up till now, I haven't really put much thought into how he intends to get me on the table. He's done it 6 times already, and clearly he has a method. But finally, I'm coming to realize that he needs me sedated. It hadn't occurred to me that I might be unconscious when he saws my chest open, still alive. But it makes sense. Pushing my foot across the cage, I kick over the water, the tainted liquid spilling across the floor and soaking into the hem of the judge's robes. He steps back instinctively, and I smile up at him with wide, innocent eyes. Oops. She did this on purpose. No, it was a total accident, I swear. I don't even bother to sound convincing. I'm such a butterfingers. I mean, buttertoes. She has the devil in her, the very devil, he sputters furiously. Faced with her divine judgment, a hair's breadth from the appointed hour when she will reap damnation, she flaunts her pride. Very well. Turning on his heel, robes swirling, the judge stalks for the hose. I'm scrambling to the rear of the cage as he marches back again, the nozzle in his hand. She shall soon see what her pride is truly worth when weighed against the ugliness of her heart. With that, he opens fire. The jet of ice-cold water drenching me, soaking my clothes and flooding the cage. I'm shivering violently when he shuts the stream off again, and as he starts for the black box with the electrical cables, I blurt, "Stop! I'm sorry. I'll confess, okay? I'll give you a confession. Just please don't electrocute me again." He hesitates. I try to read his body language, but it's nearly impossible. I know his preference is to drug me, though. His script calls for me to be pliable, repentant. I'm really sorry. Bring another glass of water and I'll drink it this time, I swear. I'll eat and I'll drink and I'll give you a full confession. That's what you want, right? Please. He turns, peering suspiciously through the mesh. The accused will confess? To everything, I promise, still trembling all over. If this is another trick, she will regret it swiftly and absolutely. His tone is dark and his words terrifyingly final. No tricks. I pick up the bread, soggy now from the drenching with the hose, and stuff some of it in my mouth. See? I'm eating. It's mushy and gross, but it's also the first liquid I've consumed in days that isn't poisoned, and it cleanses the taste of vomit from my mouth. The judge watches me, his eyes beady and unforgiving, but he finally turns back and heads for the invisible slit in the curtain. The accused receives one more chance to make her confession, and only one. May the divine have mercy on her unworthy soul. And then he's gone. The bread sits heavy in my stomach, the most I've eaten in a long while. But my head is already clearer than it's been since the minute I first woke up in this cage, and at last I have some space to think. When he comes back, if I drink the water, that will be it. I'll never wake up again. And the sick truth is, there are worse fates, like being electrocuted and then sawed open, still alive, after the judge cuts out my tongue to teach me a lesson for not admitting I'm a harlot. But either way, he plans to kill me, and I can either hit my cues like a good leading lady, or I can sabotage the show and deny him the fix he craves. When the judge returns, he stands before the cage with a fresh cup in his hand, his tone imperious. Only if the accused gives a complete confession will her request for the water be granted. I'm guilty of the sins of pride and lust, I begin, speaking in an obediently somber tone, even though my teeth chatter. I have defied the natural order and offended God, and I see now that it contaminated my soul, and I'm sorry. The judge is quiet for an unnerving moment. Then, this is not enough. For any hope of absolution in the afterlife, the accused must enumerate her sins. Here I stumble. Whether it came to me in a psychic flash or was pulled from my subconscious, I firmly believe what Agent Fields told me in my dream. The judge found me at the cafe. It's the only scenario that really makes sense. But if I did something at work to trigger this guy's punishment fantasy bloodlust, I can't think what it was. Probably I did nothing at all. The girls he killed were guilty of nothing but being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Improvising, I recount rolling my eyes at certain customers and flirting with others, overcharging people I didn't like and undercharging those I found attractive. It's almost entirely nonsense. I roll my eyes at everyone because the job sucks and I hate it, and I never feel less like flirting than when I stink of sweat and coffee from my scalp to my feet, but I deliver my speech with the conviction of Desdemona. When I finally run out of things to say, the room vibrates with another tense silence. The accused confession is barely adequate, the judge decides snappishly. But time is short. At least her sins are acknowledged. She will back away from the door. My pulse rising, I edge to the rear of the enclosure, and once I'm pressed to the far wall, he unlocks the cage and eases the cup of water inside. For a heartbeat, I want to lunge forward, catch the door while it's still open, force my way out, attack. But I sit still. He'd slam it shut again before I could reach my knees, and then would come the electroshock. Once he at last signals his permission, I dutifully fetch the drugged water, retreating back to the rear, as far from the door and the overhead light as I can get. I want him to leave, but he stands there watching. Finally, he commands, "She will drink." Lifting the cup, I pretend to take a sip. This is it, isn't it? When I drink this, I'll fall asleep, and then you'll kill me? The hour for the accused to answer for her sins is close at hand, he confirms. The devil awaits. I'll tell him to expect you, I retort, but without much vigor, and feign another sip. Then I turn away, facing the corner with my back to the light. Pressing the cup to my mouth, my lips tightly closed, I tilt my head back and let the water stream quietly over my chin and down my neck. It soaks into my shirt and pants, disappearing into the already wet fabric, while I make loud gulping noises in my throat. Provoking him into spraying me with the hose had been a risky gambit, but it had offered the only way I could think of to pull off this trick, to spill out the contents of the cup right under his nose without being caught. When it's empty, I set it down and curl up on the floor. Eyeing the judge balefully, I give a slow, drowsy blink. See you in hell. He waits as my lids close and as I slow and deepen my breath, counting on the inhale and blowing out heavily. I've faked sleep before, for parents, babysitters, guys who won't take a hint, and I'm good at it. But I can feel him, lurking, watching, and it unsettles me. It takes all my concentration to keep from twitching with nerves. Is he buying it? Does he believe I'm succumbing to the drug? Or has he seen through my ruse? A knot of painful tension spreads across my lower back when the man begins to move, edging around the cage, the hair on my neck rising. Breathe in for a count of 8. Exhale. In for 8. Exhale. There comes a scrape, a sliding noise, and then something jabs at my leg, my stomach. A broom handle? Softly the judge speaks. Laura? Hearing him say my name for the first time is a shock, but I force myself to stay inert. 8 counts in, exhale. Laura? He prods me several more times, and then the object withdraws, and I hear him shuffling away across the floor. I stop counting breaths and quietly gulp down air, my head spinning from lack of oxygen. Eyes shut tight, I can hear the judge at the table arranging his tools, metal clinking portentously, and fight the urge to vomit again. What have I done? What am I doing? An eternity passes. 2, and then his steps approach again. His key scrapes the lock and the cage door squeaks open. I remain on the ground, limp, my back throbbing and my shoulder numb where my weight rests on it. 8 counts in, exhale. He enters the cage, his breath loud, the air disturbed by his body heat. His hands close on me, tugging, rolling me onto my back. And that's when I finally act. Grabbing the first handfuls of flesh I find, I howl like a banshee and drag him to the floor as hard as I can. He slams down and I roll on top of him, wrapping my hands around his throat, squeezing. It's kill or be killed, and my vision tunnels, my feral brain taking over once more. He writhes and struggles, and then stars explode behind my eyes as a bony fist collides with my jaw. Tumbling back, I collapse to the floor. The cage spinning, my hand strikes metal, liquid sloshing and giving up the bitter scent of stomach acid as the bedpan capsizes. Beside me, the judge is already writing himself, and I'm between him and the door now, and I see my chance opening before me. We both move at once, our bodies coming together, and I feel the prick of a needle a moment before I crack the heavy bedpan across his skull. He rolls away, crumpling with a pitiful groan, vomit and urine soiling his robe, and I jerk backward, kicking my leg out in terror to dislodge the syringe from my calf. My foot comes down on it as I scramble upright, the casing smashed to fragments in an instant, the liquid inside it pooling with the water soaking the floor. I gasp, horrified. Did he push the plunger before I hit him? How much is in me? The cage hangs open and I scramble out at a frantic crawl, heaving the door shut again with a crash. The key isn't in the lock, and I realize with dismay that the judge, locked in, moving slowly, gripping the crown of his head, still has it. He won't be contained long. The room swirls and I stumble, lurching backward as fresh panic licks its way up my throat. However much of the drug is in my system, I have to get out before it overtakes me, or I'll be dead. Staggering into a run, I make a crooked dash past the surgical table, pawing feverishly at the curtains until I plunge through the slit and fall against an ascending flight of wooden steps. There's a door at the top, dark wood, blurring in and out of focus as the drug smothers my brain cells one at a time. 5 straight days of bread and water, sedatives, and shock therapy have drained my strength, and the climb leaves me winded and shaky, my heart chugging. The door opens onto a dark hallway, which opens onto a shabby living room with a floral print furniture and yellowing wallpaper, a thick beige carpet underfoot. The air smells like a combination of flea powder and onions that make my stomach clench, and darkness edges in from the corners of my eyes. Everything seems to roll back and forth, and it requires all my concentration to keep the furniture in one place. The front door taunts me from the far side of the room, the tawny shag like 30 miles of desert between me and freedom. I make it 4 crooked steps before my legs buckle and I fall. A sob racks my chest as I realize I'll never make it. The distance forward is a light year, but nearby to my left, a chintz curtain hangs across a picture window. Levering myself to my feet again, I start for it in desperation, falling again before I quite make it all the way. Breathing heavily, forcing my lungs to take more air than they want, I drag myself all the way to the window with the last vestiges of my strength. Outside, dusk is falling, the appointed hour. Under a lavender sky sit the houses, hedges, and orderly yards of an incongruously normal neighborhood. Windows glow as evening settles in, the lights a queasy smear. Across the street, I see a woman, or maybe 2 women, or maybe the same woman twice, or maybe it's a mailbox, and my muddled brain convinces the bright colors to become the human I need. I pound against the glass, leaving filthy streaks, and try to scream for help, but no sound comes out. Slowing by the second, my heart throbs in my chest, my lungs heavy. A numbing haze laps over me like a gentle surf, shadows swallowing up the sky, the lighted windows, and the object across the street that I've been hoping will save my life. The curtain flutters as I slide to the floor, and darkness grabs hold of me before my head hits the carpet. I wake again with a jerk, a fierce white light glaring into my face. Sounds are sharp, slicing through the groggy veil of the drug as I come out of its hold, metal clanking and a voice snarling. Something pulls at my ankles and I squirm, opening my eyes. My pulse goes haywire, fear napalming my nerves when I realize I'm back in the basement, lying atop the surgical table, the judge tightening a heavy-duty strap across my legs. I scream, flailing clumsily, trying to right myself, and my hand collides with something to my right. A metal shelf bearing scalpels and scissors and other deadly tools appends, crashing to the floor, the instruments scattering. Whirling, his eyes huge and furious through the holes in his hood, the judge roars, "Bitch! Satan's whore! She ruins everything! Already the ritual is delayed, and hell hungers for her filthy soul, but still she fights against justice. Help! I scream louder, shouting myself up. His hand cracks across my cheek, knocking me back. Heat and pain blossoming across the left side of my face. Forcing me against the table, he loops a second strap around my waist, pinning my arms while I'm still too dazed to fight back. Up above, from somewhere past the thick curtains around us, past the door at the top of the stairs, past even the lonely wasteland of the living room, there comes a heavy thump. The judge hears it too, spinning toward the slit in the curtain, his gloved hand working in agitated fists. No, no, no! The ritual cannot be interrupted! Diving to the floor, he scrambles to retrieve his tools, and I scream until my chest aches. There are 2 more thuds and a splintering crash, and the judge abandons his scattered knives with a squeal of panic. Footsteps shake the rafters above us, and I scream louder, wishing it could shake the room apart. Hell will have its payment, the judge gasps urgently, hoisting something up from the floor. The accused will not escape divine retribution. She will be sent to the bosom of the eternal. He raises aloft a circular saw, its sharp teeth bright against the light, as it spins to life, it emits a piercing shriek that drowns out even my own cries. The blade sparkles as he brings it down, a glittering death that plunges for my exposed breastbone, and I clench my eyes shut with one last scream, waiting for the unendurable to begin. An explosion sounds, so loud it cuts through the twin wails of my voice and the shrill mechanical saw. And then the noise of the blade spins sharply away. There comes a crash, the screech of metal teeth eating the concrete floor, and when a hand closes on my shoulder, I scream again in senseless dread. It's okay, you're safe now, a voice says, firm and reassuring. I've got you now, Laura. My eyes open, my chest hitching as I gulp in shallow, terrified breaths, lights pulsing everywhere with the beat of my heart. The face peering down at me is familiar and impossible, and the name rattles out of me like a loose screw. Agent Fields? It's over, the woman says. Her hand is warm and real, her grip tight. I smell gunpowder in the air, hear the saw shrieking furiously against the floor. Where is he? I whimper. He's gone, Agent Fields states. You're safe. You're going to be okay. I don't believe her. I won't believe her until after she's unstrapped me from the table, helped me up the stairs, and walked me out to the front yard, where an ambulance, police cars, and a crowd of neighbors are already waiting for me to appear. One week later, when I'm home from the hospital, Agent Fields and Agent Prescott pay me a visit. I sit between my parents on the couch, each of them gripping one of my hands as though I might be in danger of floating away. They're more nervous than me, I know. The doctor who examined me in the emergency room gave me something to help me sleep, and when I woke up the following morning, my ordeal in the judge's basement had begun to collapse into a fuzzy blur. Just like that, a hole opened in my memory, gulping down events I'm pretty sure I never want to relive anyway. It's strange, though, like searching for a tooth that's inexplicably no longer there. His name was Jason Thomas Hurley, Fields begins. Does that mean anything to you? I shake my head blankly, and Prescott silently produces a photograph from a folder under her arm. A cold chill sweeps through me as I take in a face. Pale skin, dishwater hair, beady eyes, and Field jumps on my recognition. You recognize him? No, I mean, yes, I stammer weakly, my mind spinning. He's a customer at the cafe. Sort of a regular. His features are nondescript, and yet they jump out at me. I can see that same face on the other side of the register, those eyes trying to meet mine as he pays for his drink, saying you should smile more. Every time he came in, you should smile more. I shudder. Smile guy. He's the judge? He was. Prescott answers briskly, tucking the photo away. I nod vaguely. It's gone from my memory, but my parents have assured me multiple times that the judge is dead, that he was shot by the FBI just before he could kill me. Twice in the past 7 days, I've woken up screaming, haunted by a mechanical whine and the glittering rotation of metal fangs. You saved my life. You saved your own life. Agent Fields folds her hands together between her knees. We're still not entirely sure how, but you escaped the cage in Hurley's basement and made it to the first floor. A neighbor saw you beating on the window and called the police. She knew Hurley lived alone, and your disappearance was all over the news. With a friendly smile, she adds, if you hadn't managed that, we'd never have known where to look for you. I wish you could remember what happened, because I bet it's a hell of a story. I'm glad I can't, I answer truthfully. Brandy, Mark, and Shauna have been by every day since I came home, trying to help me recover my lost time, but I've resisted their encouragement. Other pictures have been shown to me, the cage, the basement, the table, and I quail at the thought that they have anything to do with me. The truth is, I don't think I really want to know what happened to me. Ever. Perhaps that's for the best. Agent Fields proceeds to fill in some more details, describing items they found in Hurley's home, corroborating evidence of his crimes. I tune all of it out. At last, she gets to her feet and reaches for my hand. Congratulations, Laura. You're a fighter and a survivor, and you've still got the rest of your life to live. What do you think you're going to do? I'm going to quit my fucking job, I answer immediately, and am rewarded with a throaty laugh. The two women say their goodbyes, and we see them to the door. And for a long time after they leave, I watch out the windows as my boring neighborhood, houses and hedges, mailboxes and tidy yards, falls under the sway of dusk, windows lighting up one by one. Hundreds of lives left to live. I hope you guys enjoyed that reading. This is a very long video because it was a much longer story than I thought it was going to be, but that's okay. I hope you guys enjoy and have a relaxing and, chill rest of your evening, and I hope you read some good things. And if you enjoyed hearing me read to you, you like my voice, you like ebooks, audiobooks, and you want to hear me read more stories or excerpts from books or the like, drop a comment down below, let me know. All right. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Mwah!